Lone trucker vanished in 1991. 30 years later, his son uncovers a shocking secret. When Fernando Rocha vanished without a trace along the BR-116 in 1991, everyone assumed he was just another driver swallowed by Brazil's most dangerous road. But 30 years later, his son Gabriel found a note buried in an attic box, one written in his father's handwriting, and one that changed everything. That note didn't just reopen old wounds, it set off a chain of revelations that no one was ready for. What Gabriel uncovered wasn't just a family secret, it was a national cover-up, a silent network that had been hiding in plain sight, and the truth behind a man who was either a coward or a hero. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. These emotional journeys are just getting started. This story will take you from dusty highways to hidden warehouses, from forgotten cassette tapes to the voices of the past that refuse to stay buried. By the end, one question will burn in your mind: how far would you go for the truth? And would you have the courage to carry the legacy of someone you barely knew? Now, follow Gabriel's first step back, onto the road that took his father away. Gabriel Rocha hadn't been back to his grandmother's house in years. The place still smelled of old eucalyptus soap and coffee ground into wood. He came to clear out the attic after her passing, expecting only boxes of dusty memories. But when he opened a crate marked 1991, a faded photograph slipped out. In it, his father, Fernando, stood proudly in front of a rust-colored Scania truck, one hand on the door, the other holding a small boy, Gabriel. His breath caught. Behind them, almost hidden, was a man with sunglasses and a crooked smile. Gabriel had never seen him before. Tucked inside the box was also a folded note in his father's handwriting. "If you're reading this, it means I never came back. I'm sorry." That single sentence shattered the safe silence of 30 years. He sat down, heart pounding. A truth had been waiting all this time, buried in shadows. The next morning, Gabriel sat in his car staring at the BR-116 sign. The same road where his father had vanished without a trace. Rumors had always swirled: accident, robbery, or simply a man walking away. But his mother never spoke much about it. As a child, Gabriel filled the silence with fantasies that his father had become a secret agent or died heroically. As a teenager, he buried those hopes. Now at 35, his fingers trembled as he gripped the steering wheel. A question returned: why leave a note if he just disappeared? He took a deep breath and turned the ignition. As the engine growled, he whispered, "Time to find you, Dad." With that, he began the same route Fernando had driven on his last known delivery, mile by mile, chasing a ghost across the cracked asphalt. His first stop was a roadside mechanic shop covered in vines and rusted signage. The owner, an elderly man with cataracts and grease-stained overalls, didn't recognize the name Rocha, but pointed him to a local bar where the old road dogs still met. Gabriel entered the dim place as if stepping into another era. Cigarette. Smoke curled under low lights, and laughter bounced off cracked walls. An old jukebox played a song his dad once hummed. As he approached the counter, an old man in a denim vest turned slowly. "You're Fernando's boy?" he asked before. Gabriel said a word. The room went silent. He was one of the good ones. Gabriel's chest tightened. "You knew him?" The man nodded. "We all did, but he got too close to something and then he vanished." Gabriel followed that lead to a stretch of road deep into the forested edge of the state. There, nearly swallowed by foliage, he found it. A rusted Scania truck leaning off the shoulder, as if left mid-drive. He stopped the car, heart pounding. The door creaked open like it had waited 3 decades to speak. The inside smelled of earth and metal. The seat was torn, the wheel coated in dust, and on the dashboard a moldy photo of Gabriel as a child, held in place with yellowed tape. Emotion overwhelmed him. This was it. The last known place his father had been. But something felt wrong. Why hadn't the police ever mentioned finding the truck? Why was it still here? And who placed the small wooden cross in the soil nearby, with no name, only a single date, 09/14/1991. As Gabriel knelt before the cross, A strange feeling crept over him. The dirt seemed recently disturbed. He glanced around. No footsteps. He took a picture of the site and backed away. That night, at a cheap roadside motel, he examined the contents of the attic box again. One paper, crumpled and nearly unreadable, mentioned a shipping company, Transvita Cargo. A name unfamiliar to him, but the logo matched something on the truck's door, barely visible under rust. He searched the name online, but nothing came. Up. The company seemed to have vanished, just like his father, but something in his gut told him they were connected. As he lay in bed, unable to sleep, a memory from childhood surfaced. His father arguing with someone on the phone. The phrase that echoed was, "I told you, I'm not driving that route anymore." The next morning, Gabriel visited the regional transport registry. Most records from the 90s were paper-based, long boxed up or discarded, but a sympathetic clerk allowed him into the archives. After hours of digging, he found a delivery slip from September 1991. It listed Fernando Rocha as the driver, hauling a sealed cargo do not inspect from São Paulo to Porto Alegre. What stood out wasn't the cargo, it was the signature of the dispatcher, Baltazar Mendes. The name tugged at something. His grandmother once mentioned that name as a man who owed your father a favor. Gabriel snapped a photo of the document. A link had formed. But who was Baltazar? And why was Fernando running from that final shipment? He returned to the bar, hoping to find the denim-vested man again, but he wasn't there. A waitress handed him a napkin with a scribbled note. "Baltazar lives by the quarry road, be careful." Gabriel folded the note and tucked it in his jacket. The rain had started to fall, but he drove through the mud-soaked road until he reached a small dilapidated cabin. A man sat on the porch, rocking silently, staring at the trees. Gabriel stopped the car and stepped out, rain soaking his shirt. "Are you Baltazar?" The man's eyes didn't move. "You shouldn't have come here, boy." A chill ran through Gabriel's spine. Something about that voice, cold, tired, and broken, made him realize he was closer to the truth than ever. Baltazar finally looked up, his eyes clouded with age and regret. "Your father was a good man," he said. "Too good. That's why they got to him." Gabriel stepped closer. "Who's they?" The man shook his head. "You don't want to know. But if you keep digging, they'll come for you too." Gabriel clenched his fists. "I've lived without a father my whole life. I can live with the truth." Baltazar stood slowly, walked inside, and returned moments later with a key, old, rusted, with a faded emblem etched on it. The same one. Gabriel saw on the truck. "This opened something your father never got to finish." Gabriel took it, hands trembling. He didn't know what it unlocked, but he knew it was the next step. And he wouldn't stop now. That night, as the wind howled outside, Gabriel sat in the car staring at the key under the glove compartment light. So many questions swirled, but one thought eclipsed the rest. What did my father try to protect me from? He looked at the photo again, the stranger behind the wheel, the taped picture in the truck, the unmarked cross. Every detail pointed not to an accident, but a decision. And now Gabriel had made his. He would follow the trail wherever it led, no matter what he uncovered. As the key turned cold in his hand, the rain stopped. Silence fell over the road again, and somewhere in the distance, a truth waited to be unearthed. Gabriel woke up before dawn, parked near a service station long abandoned, where only the cracked pavement remembered stories. The night had left condensation on his windshield, blurring the forest around him into vague silhouettes. He replayed Baltazar's warning again and again. "They'll come for you too." But that fear only sharpened his focus. He set off toward a nearby town mentioned in his father's route sheet, Baravella. It was a place where old roads met silence, and memories lingered like fog. There he found a retired trucker named Raul, who remembered Fernando vividly. "He stopped here 3 nights in a row, always looking over his shoulder. One night he told me he wasn't sure he'd finish that run." Gabriel leaned in. "Did he say why?" Raul paused. "Only that the cargo wasn't what they said it was." Gabriel thanked Raul and walked back to his car, the weight of every sentence building tension in his chest. He noticed a small chapel, across the road with candles flickering even at that early hour. Inside, a wall displayed photos of lost travelers. He scanned them slowly, some faded, some recent. And then his heart skipped. One photo showed his father's truck, same license plate, but in the background stood a second truck with a broken headlight. Another driver, maybe. He took a picture of it and asked the caretaker, an old woman in her 70s, if she knew anything. She looked at him for a long second. Some men drive away from danger. Others drive into it. Then she walked away, leaving him with that haunting line. Later that day, Gabriel visited the address of Transvita Cargo found on the crumpled document. The building was now a supermarket, but an elderly cashier said it used to be a loading dock. "Shady company," she whispered. "People say one of their drivers went missing, and no one ever came asking, except a boy once looking for his father." That last sentence hit Gabriel like a punch. When was this, he asked. 10 years ago, maybe more. It hadn't been him, so who else came looking? He left shaken, but also more determined. The puzzle was deeper than he thought. He drove back to the motel with his mind racing. Someone else had chased this same ghost. That night, unable to sleep, Gabriel examined the truck photos again and zoomed in. The broken headlight bore a symbol scratched into the chrome, a triangle with a serpent. Curious, he searched it online, and it led him to a defunct forum for former logistics workers. One thread stood out: BR-116 and the cargo that disappeared. The posts were anonymous, full of fear and fragmented clues, but one username repeated cryptically, Sombra 116. The user claimed that a driver named Fernando vanished with more than just cargo. Gabriel messaged the account, not expecting an answer. But moments later, a reply arrived. "You're too close, don't trust Baltazar. The truth is hidden in plain sight." His hands trembled. Who was Sombra 116? And how did they know he spoke to Baltazar? The next day, Gabriel returned to the rusted Scania. Something kept pulling him back, as if the answers were still hidden there. He opened every compartment, every panel, but found nothing, until he crawled beneath the seat. There, taped to the underside, was a rusted metal box. The lock was broken, and inside was a single key, ornate, heavier than expected, with the same triangle serpent emblem. Tucked beneath it was a torn map with a circle drawn around a location marked KM247. He checked the GPS. It was along a stretch of forested highway, isolated with no rest stops nearby. He started the engine, his thoughts spinning. Why was this hidden so well? What had his father tried to keep secret, even in death? As Gabriel approached KM247, the road narrowed and trees thickened. A gravel path branched off into the woods. Against better judgment, he turned onto it. A few kilometers in, the road ended at what appeared to be an old storage site. Abandoned trailers, moss-covered containers, and silence. He stepped out cautiously, scanning the area. In one of the trailers, he found file boxes labeled Transvita, Confidential. Dust rose as he opened the first one. Inside were shipping manifests with falsified names, unlisted destinations, and repeated references to package red. The last document listed Fernando Rocha as the driver. He took photos of everything, heart-pounding. These were not ordinary deliveries. Something illegal, maybe dangerous, was being moved under the guise of freight. As he exited the trailer, a sudden noise behind him made him freeze. Branches snapped. He ducked and hid behind a rusted container. Two men, both in dark jackets, walked past, speaking low. One of them said, "He's here, that truck was moved last night." Gabriel's blood turned to ice. Someone had been to the Scania recently. He waited until they moved deeper into the site, then slipped back to his car and sped off, heart racing. Every part of him screamed to stop, to go to the police. But what would he say? That he found documents no one knew existed? That strangers were now following him? He couldn't stop. Not yet. He needed the full picture before anyone else took it from him. That evening, Gabriel found a payphone, too paranoid to use his mobile, and called a number listed on one of the older shipping receipts. To his surprise, someone answered. A voice, low and gravelly, said, "You've seen too much. Turn back now." Gabriel's stomach twisted. Who is this? The voice hesitated. Your father wasn't supposed to make that run. They forced him. Then the line went dead. No name, no further detail, just a warning. He slumped against the booth. The phrase repeated, they forced him. So Fernando hadn't chosen this fate. He had been cornered, used, and possibly killed for refusing to comply. Rage and grief crashed inside Gabriel, but also clarity. He would keep going. His father wasn't a coward. He was a target. Back in the motel, Gabriel opened the attic box one more time, hoping he had missed something. Between two sheets of paper, he found it. Another photo, this one showing his father shaking hands with a man in a suit whose face was scratched out. Behind them, a banner read, Porto Alegre Central Distribution, Grand Opening 1990. That name had never come up before. Was this where everything had started, or where it ended? Gabriel stared at the photo, fingers tracing the outline of the scratched face. He now had a new location, a new question, but the same mission. As he packed his bag, he heard a noise at the motel door. 3 soft knocks. His breath stopped. Was it housekeeping, or had the road followed him here? The 3 knocks echoed through Gabriel's motel room like gunshots. He stayed still, breath shallow, ears straining. A 4th knock came, softer, almost hesitant. He moved quietly to the window and peeked through the curtain. No one was there. Only the shadows of a flickering street lamp danced outside. He waited another minute, then slowly opened the door. On the floor was a sealed envelope with his name scribbled across it. No postage, no return address. Inside, a single sheet of paper read, KM 312, ask for Vera, don't tell anyone you're coming. No signature. The handwriting wasn't his father's, but something about it felt familiar. Gabriel sat on the edge of the bed, trying to decode the warning. The road kept pulling him deeper, and now someone else was guiding him. But was it help or a trap? The next morning, he left early and drove toward KM 312, a sector of the highway long avoided due to frequent landslides. The road twisted through hills, with broken guardrails and forgotten signs. At a nearly invisible exit, he spotted a small roadside inn surrounded by fog. He parked and walked to the door. A woman in her 60s opened it before he could knock. You must be Gabriel, she said without surprise. Come in before someone sees you. He followed her inside, heart pounding. The inn was simple, lined with old photos of truckers, CB radios, and framed maps. I'm Vera, she said. Your father trusted me once. He left something here before he disappeared. I was told never to open it, only to give it to his son if he ever came looking. Vera led Gabriel to a storage room. From a loose panel in the floor, she pulled out a dusty metal box and handed it to him. He opened it slowly. Inside was a cassette tape, an old photo of his parents before Gabriel was born, and a note written by Fernando. If you found this, I didn't make it. But you did. That means it's your turn now. The tape was labeled for Gabriel. With trembling hands, he asked Vera for a cassette player. She returned with a bulky recorder. When he hit play, his father's voice crackled through the speakers. Son, I never meant to leave you. I was transporting something dangerous. I thought I could protect you by running. But they're everywhere, inside the system, inside the companies. If I disappear, don't let them erase me. Follow the markers. Gabriel's eyes welled up. The voice he hadn't heard in decades was alive again. As the tape played on, Fernando described his last days. Strange calls from his employer. A mysterious man with the serpent tattoo visiting his home and a sealed crate labeled, Do Not Open, loaded without his approval. I opened it anyway, the voice said. Inside was proof. Documents, names, blackmail material on officials. I took pictures, I hid them near the old refinery where the trains don't run anymore. The recording ended with, You'll find the truth in the dark, but be careful who's watching. Gabriel sat in silence. His hands shook, but his purpose was clear. He asked Vera about the refinery. She pointed at a map and circled an area just off KM 294. People say it's haunted, she whispered, but your father was braver than all of us. Maybe you are. Too. Gabriel thanked Vera and drove for hours along the desolate road, his mind running faster than the engine. As night fell, he reached the refinery, a skeletal structure swallowed by vines and silence. The metal creaked under his boots as he walked inside. Using the clues from the tape, he found an old locker wedged behind a fallen beam. Inside, wrapped in plastic, were photos and documents exactly as described. Corruption, names, smuggled goods disguised as government shipments. But there was more. A photo of Fernando looking beaten, standing beside a man in a suit, his face now clearly visible. Gabriel froze. It was the same man from the scratched-out photo in the attic. And in the background, Balthazar. Not young, not innocent, not silent. Gabriel's blood boiled. He had trusted Balthazar's sorrow, believed his fear. But now it was clear. Balthazar wasn't just a witness. He was part of it, maybe even the bait. Gabriel took pictures of everything and packed the originals. As he turned to leave, headlights flooded the entrance. A black SUV skidded to a stop and men stepped out with flashlights. "Move and you'll regret it," one said. Gabriel dashed into the shadows, weaving through machinery, heart racing. A bullet ricocheted off a pipe behind him. He didn't stop. He found a side exit, sprinted through tall grass, and reached the woods. For an hour he ran until his legs collapsed beneath him. Covered in mud and breathless, he lay staring at the stars. This was no longer just a search. It was a manhunt. He waited until morning before contacting anyone. This time he called an old journalist his mother once mentioned, Clara, known for exposing corruption. When she answered, Gabriel explained everything, offered evidence, and begged her to help bring this to light. "Meet me in Rio," she said, "and come alone." As he prepared to leave, he stopped by Vera's inn one last time. She looked pale. "Someone was here asking for you," she said. "Said they were your friend. I didn't tell them anything, but I think they'll be back." Gabriel left her a photo from the refinery. "If anything happens to me, give this to Clara." Then he drove off into the rising sun, determined to finish what his father started, even if it cost him everything. Before reaching Rio, Gabriel stopped at the beach where his father used to take him. He sat on a rock, watching the waves. For the first time in days, he let himself feel, not just fear or anger, but love, gratitude. His father had died a hunted man, but not a coward. He had tried to shield his family from something monstrous. Gabriel whispered to the wind, "I forgive you." Then he stood up, ready for the next chapter. But behind him, a phone rang. It was Clara. Her voice was tense. "Gabriel, they're watching me now, and someone else is already telling your story, the wrong version." He clenched his jaw. "Then we'll tell the right one, together." Gabriel arrived in Rio at dusk, heart pounding and eyes scanning every mirror. He didn't trust anyone anymore. Clara waited in a small cafe by the marina, her notebook already open. She was older than he expected, calm, sharp-eyed, the kind of woman who'd stared down worse than threats. He handed her the photos, the recordings, and every scrap of evidence. She studied each piece in silence. Then she looked up. "You've uncovered something that's been buried for decades." Gabriel nodded. "My father died because of it." Clara exhaled. "And if you keep pushing, others might too." He leaned in. "I'm not here to be careful. I'm here to finish what he started." She closed her notebook. "Then you need to meet someone who can confirm everything and possibly destroy what's left of your father's image." Later that night, Clara led Gabriel to a gated facility by the docks, a private residence guarded by cameras. Inside was an elderly man in a wheelchair, surrounded by books and oxygen tanks. "This is Dr. Tavares," she said. "He used to manage operations for Transvita until he disappeared in 1993. The man looked at Gabriel with hollow eyes. "I knew your father," he rasped. He was warned, but he thought justice mattered more than safety. Gabriel sat down, fists clenched. "What happened to him?" The old man took a deep breath. "He found something he shouldn't have. A list of political clients using Transvita to launder money and move people. Your father wanted to expose them, so they made him disappear." Gabriel's mouth dried. "And Balthazar?" The man's gaze darkened. He was the bait. He fed your father information, he also fed it to them. Gabriel felt his throat tighten. Every conversation, every warning had been tainted. Balthazar had never been a friend, he was a handler. Why come forward now? Gabriel asked. Dr. Tavares looked away. Because I've been dying slowly for years. But you still have time to decide if your father should be remembered as a hero or a traitor. Gabriel froze. What do you mean? The old man wheeled himself to a safe and opened it. Inside were classified documents, some implicating Fernando in the transport deals. Gabriel scanned them, hands trembling. His father had signed contracts, accepted money. He played both sides for a while, Tavares said, until his conscience caught up. Gabriel dropped the pages. He didn't betray anyone. He tried to fix his mistake. The old man gave a sad smile. That's what killed him. Gabriel left the building shaken. The idea that his father might have been involved, even briefly, shattered the image he'd carried since childhood. Outside, Clara waited by her car. You okay? He shook his head. I don't know who he was anymore. She placed a hand on his shoulder. Maybe that's the point. No one is just one thing. As they drove away, Gabriel stared out the window. Everything he believed had cracked, but something deeper stirred. Not just grief, but resolve. His father had made mistakes, but he tried to do right by the end. That's what mattered. Still, he needed one more answer. Why had Fernando taken that last trip, knowing it could cost him his life? He returned to the photo from the refinery, the one where his father looked bruised but standing. In the corner was a date stamp, September 12th, 1991. The disappearance happened 2 days later. Gabriel noticed something he had missed before, a van parked behind the truck with a visible partial license plate. He ran it through an old government vehicle database Clara gave him access to. The match came quickly. The van was registered to a now-defunct Community Development Initiative, a front company used by Transvita. The van had been reported stolen on the very day his father vanished. Gabriel's heart pounded. His father hadn't fled. He'd been taken. It had all been staged to make it look like a disappearance. Fueled by this revelation, Gabriel returned to the BR-116, to the wooden cross. He dug carefully around it, driven by instinct. His shovel hit something metallic. Beneath the soil lay a rusted container, sealed but not locked. Inside was a final letter, signed by Fernando Rocha. If you're reading this, they didn't silence me. You did it, son. You followed the road, and now you must decide. Tell the world or protect those you love. Gabriel sat there under the same trees that had swallowed his father's story, holding the words he thought he'd never hear. The choice was in his hands now. Justice or peace. Truth or safety. He drove to Vera's one last time, seeking clarity. She opened the door with tears in her eyes. I knew they'd come for you. I prayed they wouldn't. Gabriel handed her the letter. She read it in silence, then hugged him tight. He never stopped loving you. That night, he stayed in the inn's quiet room, replaying his father's voice from the cassette over and over. The next morning, he woke with resolve. He'd speak with Clara. They'd publish everything. But on his way out, he noticed a black car parked down the hill. 2 men sat inside, watching the inn. The story was no longer his alone. It had awakened others. Gabriel drove to Rio with the letter taped to his chest, documents hidden under the floorboard. Clara greeted him with urgency. They tried to access my files. We're out of time. She handed him a flash drive. Encrypted, backed up 3 times. Take it somewhere safe. Gabriel nodded. It's not just about me now. It's about all the fathers who vanished without answers. They embraced like comrades at war. Then, Gabriel turned and walked into the crowd, disappearing into the noise of the city. The truth was ready. The wheel was finally turning again. Gabriel didn't sleep. With the flash drive secured and the truth bubbling inside him, he drove to the last location his father ever mentioned, the freight yard at the edge of Porto Alegre. Once a bustling hub, now it lay silent, carcasses of metal scattered across weed-covered rails. Guided by old photos and coordinates scribbled in Fernando's notebook, he found a dilapidated warehouse marked Sector B7. Its doors were rusted shut, but inside, dust-covered crates lined the walls. He recognized the serpent triangle, emblem stamped on the lids. With a crowbar, he forced one open. Documents, yes, but also personal belongings, wallets, ID cards, jewelry. Items stripped from people. Fernando hadn't been moving drugs or weapons. He had been transporting human cargo. Gabriel stumbled back, bile rising. This was worse than he imagined, and his father had been caught in the middle. Among the documents was a manifest signed off on September 14, 1991, the day Fernando vanished. His name was there, along with details of a transfer route and coded recipient locations. But what struck Gabriel was a final entry. Package lost, driver terminated, operation sanitized. The cold language chilled him. His father had tried to smuggle someone out, disrupt the system, and they killed him for it. Gabriel snapped photos, knowing he was now in deeper danger than ever. Outside, a truck engine roared to life. He ducked behind crates, heart hammering. Footsteps echoed inside the warehouse. He recognized one of the voices. It was Balthazar. He was stupid to come here, just like his old man. Rage coursed through Gabriel, but he stayed hidden. Then another voice replied, calm and cold, "Let's finish what we started." Gabriel waited until they moved to another aisle, then slipped out the side door. He ran across the yard, breath tight in his chest, and jumped behind a derailed freight car. The shadows covered him as the men searched, their voices fading into curses. He crawled into an old cargo container and stayed there for hours, replaying the moment he saw those personal belongings. His father had risked everything to save lives, not betray them, and now Gabriel was the only one left who could expose it all. When the yard fell silent, he emerged and drove straight to a journalist's safe house Clara had arranged. There, with trembling fingers, he uploaded every file to a cloud backup and scheduled it for release in 48 hours, unless he stopped it. His final line of defense. Clara met him there the next morning, pale but determined. "I've received death threats," she said, "but I won't stop." Gabriel looked at her, his face hollowed by grief and resolve. "They killed my father to hide this. I won't let them erase him again." She nodded. Together they drafted the exposé. The headline read, "Highway of Shadows, the hidden trafficking network of BR-116. Every document, every photo, and Fernando's final letter would go public. But as they prepared to send it, the power cut out. Then the internet. Then Clara's phone went dead. A blackout. Gabriel's gut turned. They're here." Moments later, tires screeched outside. A black van stopped at the gate. Gabriel grabbed the hard drive in Clara's hand. "Back exit now." They escaped through the fire escape and ducked into an alley, blending into the morning crowd. They took refuge in an underground bus terminal where Clara's contact waited. "You need to disappear," the man told Gabriel. "They'll hunt you until you're gone, or until you release this." Gabriel looked at the hard drive in his hands. He had one final choice. Post it now and spark chaos, or use it as leverage to dismantle the network from within. He turned to Clara. "If I post it, others might get hurt. If I don't, they'll keep doing this." She stared back. What would Fernando do? That question echoed through him. Not what the hero would do, not what the criminal would do, but what the man who loved his son would do. Gabriel made the call. He contacted a retired judge his father once trusted, an incorruptible man who now lived in exile. They met in secret that night. Gabriel handed him the entire case. "Take it. Bring it to the right people. I'll disappear for a while." The judge nodded slowly. "This will shake the foundations of many powerful men." Gabriel smiled sadly. "Good. Let it." With that, he turned his back on the only home he'd ever known. Clara hugged him one last time. "I'll keep your father's name alive." Gabriel whispered, "Make them remember him as the man who tried to save lives, not the one they tried to erase." 2 weeks passed. The story broke through international channels. Names were named. Arrests began. Survivors came forward. And across the country, roadside memorials appeared bearing Fernando Rocha's name. "A driver who delivered the truth," one sign read. Gabriel, now hiding in the mountains under a new name, watched it all from a dusty radio. His eyes burned. He had expected closure, but what he felt was something deeper, peace. He took out the last photo he kept of his father, kissed it, and placed it under a stone. The road had taken Fernando away. But now it carried his name on every wind. Back. In Rio, Clara stood in front of a packed auditorium as she received an award for investigative journalism. She held up the flash drive and said, "This was handed to me by the son of a man they tried to silence. He had every reason to stay quiet, but he chose courage." Applause thundered. She looked up. "Wherever you are, Gabriel, you did it." In that moment, across thousands of miles, Gabriel looked up at the sky. A hawk soared overhead, its wings wide and free. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time, it belonged to him. The road that had once taken Fernando Rocha away had now brought his name into the light. For Gabriel, it wasn't just the end of a journey. It was the completion of a wound that had lived inside him for 30 years. Hidden away in the highlands, under a new identity, he lived simply, anonymously. Locals knew him only as a quiet man who repaired radios and watched the stars. But inside he carried the voice of his father, the courage of his bloodline, and the story of a man who had once been more than just a name on a cross. He never tried to explain who he was. He didn't have to. The world had spoken. His father's truth had become legend. Each morning Gabriel walked a path through the forest that reminded him of the BR-116, the bends, the trees, the endless horizon. On one of these walks, he built a new memorial, not with a name or a date, but with a symbol, a carved piece of wood shaped like a steering wheel, embedded with a small cassette. He placed it in the earth and whispered, "You kept driving so I could stop." The birds sang above him. Wind swept through the trees. And for the first time since he was a child, he felt like the road wasn't something that stole. It was something that returned what mattered. The pain, the silence, the brokenness, it had all become part of something whole. Far away, Clara continued telling the story. She published a book, gave interviews, and started a foundation for the children of missing truckers. Every time she mentioned Fernando, her voice softened. Every time she showed Gabriel's photos, she saw hope in the audience's eyes. She never revealed his location. She never would. It wasn't protection, it was reverence. "He gave the world the truth," she'd say, "but he kept the quiet for himself." Awards followed, honors. But none mattered to her as much as the letter she received months later. No name, no return address, just 6 words scribbled inside. "He would have been proud of you." One day, Gabriel received a knock at his door. It was a young man in his 20s, nervous and wide-eyed. "Are you the son of Fernando Rocha?" Gabriel hesitated, then nodded. The boy took a deep breath. "My father was one of the people your dad tried to save. He didn't make it, but my mother did, and I'm here because of that. I just wanted to say thank you." Gabriel stepped outside, eyes misted. They sat on the porch for hours, talking, not about pain or politics, but about fathers and sons. That night, as the boy left, Gabriel felt something unlock in his chest. The burden hadn't vanished, but now he was no longer carrying it alone. In his quiet home, Gabriel kept only one photo on the wall, the picture of him as a child on his father's lap in front of the truck. He looked at it every morning. Sometimes he talked to it. "I used to think you left me," he whispered once, "but you gave me a map, you gave me a mission." Outside, the trees whispered. The road continued. There would always be dangers in the world, people hiding truth, people silencing the brave. But Fernando's story had carved a path through that darkness, and Gabriel had walked it to the end. Years later, the site where the truck had been found was turned into a memorial park. Travelers left flowers, truckers honked as they passed. A plaque read, "To those who carried more than cargo, who carried courage." Among the crowd, a man sometimes watched in silence, baseball cap low over his face. No one noticed him. No one asked. But a few old drivers nodded his way, sensing something familiar, a presence, a memory, a thank you they couldn't say out loud. And then he would turn, walk back to his quiet life and disappear into the trees again. The road never truly ends. It circles, twists, returns. But what we leave behind matters more than where we go. Gabriel knew that now. His father wasn't a hero because he fought the system. He was a hero because he chose his son's life over his own peace. That legacy wasn't forged in headlines or documentaries. It was forged in choices, in silence, in risk, in love. And as long as Gabriel breathed, he would carry that truth like a torch in the night, not to burn, but to guide. One evening, an old CB radio Gabriel had rebuilt crackled to life. A voice came through, dusty, crackling but unmistakable. "Rocha, if you're out there, the highway remembers you." It was a trucker, maybe one of the old friends, maybe just someone passing the story forward. Gabriel smiled. He picked up the mic, pressed the button, and answered simply, "Still rolling, brother. Keep the lights on." Then he set the mic down, leaned back in his chair, and watched the sun set over the hills. If this story moved you, subscribe now for more powerful tales that dig deep into the human soul. Like, comment, and share your thoughts. What would you have done in Gabriel's place? And if you'd like to support our work, become a channel member today. Your support helps us bring more untold stories to light. More stories like this are on the way. Don't miss our next emotional revelation. See you on the next road.